All right, check this out. I'm going to come over to this tree and I'm going to click it. And there we go. And it chops down that tree. And we chop down that tree and that tree and that tree. In this video, we're going to chop down trees and we're going to mine rocks. We're going to code a system for interacting with objects in our game. Let's get started. The starting code for this video is in the description below if you'd like to follow along. It goes with the code from the last video. In addition to that, there are 3 new images, pickaxe.png, axe.png, as well as a tree stump that we're going to use in this video. These are available in the description below, as well as are included in the starting code. You can find all of the assets for this game on my website. The link is in the description below. Let's keep track of everything we're going to interact with. Go into core and then go into engine.py. From here, let's add a new category in our init function. So we're going to say self.usables equals, and then we'll go from there. So anything that the player can use or interact with will be kept here. In addition to that, go ahead and add this down here to clear the usables. Let's go ahead and create a component for something that is usable. This will allow the player to interact with it. Go into components and let's create a new file called usable.py. Something that is usable will have some kind of, it will pass in a name to it, and also we'll add it to the usables in our engine so that the player will know about it. Similarly, if we need to remove this object, we'll call the breakdown to remove it. This method right here is the whole kind of key of this all. This is going to be called when the player clicks on this thing, right? So if they click on a tree or something, we're going to call this function. Create a class called mineable. This will be something that can be mined, like ore or a rock or something. We're going to call the super constructor to do that. And we need to actually create our own on function for this. For now, go ahead and create this method here. And we'll just have it print mining rock. We're going to expand upon this later, but we want to test to make sure that this works correctly. The logic for interacting with something will actually happen in the player class, and it will happen when you click on that thing. The player will try to interact with that object. Let's go into player.py. In player.py, find a place that we can add the interact function. The interact function is going to take in a mouse position, and we're going to loop through each one of the usables inside of there. We want to check if the usable is being clicked on, and I think it's a good thing I think it's okay to assume that the usable will have a sprite of some sort. And if that sprite is clicked on, then we'll interact with it. Using our entity system that we have, we're going to check and see if the usable has a sprite. If it doesn't, we're not going to interact with it. If it doesn't, it's not visible or something. We're going to get a reference to the usable sprites by doing the following. Again, this is an entity system that we created for this game. This is not part of Python or anything. We're going to get the X, Y, width, and height of the sprite that we want to click on. This will allow us to check if, for example, the mouse is inside of that's a mouse. If the mouse is inside of the entity, right? If it's clicking somewhere in here. So we need to get the X and Y position, which is right here, and then the width and the height. And we're going to basically check and see if the mouse is in there. The logic to do this is the following. So notice that the mouse position is kind of in between these, right? So it's like this is left and then this is right here. So if the mouse is inside of that, and then this is the top and this is the bottom. Ooh, this is the bottom of the sprite. So we're going to check and see if it's within the top and bottom of the sprite. Go ahead and type the word pass here. In testing this, I found that for basically any interaction that the player does, we need to know how close the player is to that thing. Like if you're chopping a tree, you probably need to be close to that tree. Because of that, we need to get the distance. In your core folder, we're going to create a new file called math_ext.py. And we're inside of here, we're going to create a distance function. You're actually using the Pythagorean theorem here, like you're drawing a triangle between, like, you are one of the points of the triangle and then like the tree is the other point. and you're seeing what that distance is. You're doing like a squared plus b squared, equals c squared, and then you find c here, and that's how you get it. So now that we have that, let's go back to player.py. We're going to replace the pass with the following code. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our sprite, the sprite of the player. We're going to calculate the distance, and this seems a little complicated, but let me explain it. So we have, for example, the player's here, and then like the tree, for example, is here. We can draw rectangles around these. And basically the point that we want is we want where the player is standing, like right here and right here. This is the distance that we actually want to calculate. So to do that, we're going to come in, we're going to go halfway of the width and then all the way down of the height for both of these, relative to where the top left corner is of each one of them, which is the X and Y position. So this is where X and Y of the player is, and that's where X and Y of the tree is. Notice here that we're getting the halfway point of that for each one of them. Like we're dividing them by 2 for the width, but we're not doing it for the height because we want to go the full distance down for the player and for the tree. This will help just to calculate the distance much better. Finally, we're going to call usable.on, and we're going to pass in the ourselves, and we're also going to pass in the distance as well. Go into your data, and inside of the objects, we're going to import our mineable class. And then right inside of the rock, we're going to come in here, we're going to say mineable, and we're also going to say rock. Last thing is the actual key press itself. We need to know exactly when the key is clicked. And I have a bit of a solution or way that I like to do this. Add another set up at the very top for mouse buttons just pressed. We're then going to check this. So we're going to have another function for is mouse just pressed, and you can check whether the button is actually in there. Jumping back into engine.py, go up to the while loop. Go ahead and import our new set here. When a mouse button is pressed, we're going to add that to our list here. And then up at the top, what we're going to do is we're going to say mouse buttons just pressed .clear. And so what you'll do is the set will basically clear itself every frame. It'll add it, and then what'll happen is the update loop will happen. And so any object that wants to see whether a mouse button was just pressed can do that. This isn't like a perfect way. The benefit of doing this, though, is that you can just call a function anywhere in the code now and check whether a mouse button was just pressed down. Jumping back into player.py, we're going to go to the update loop. Inside of here, we could probably just put this right next to really anywhere inside of the update function. We're going to check for 1, which is the first mouse button in this case. What it's going to do is it's going to call self.interact, the method that we created earlier for interacting with something, passing in a mouse position. It doesn't know yet what it's interacting with, but it will pass in the current mouse position. With that being said, let's go into main.py and we'll run it. And now if you click on a rock, I'll show you what happened. In the terminal, it actually printed mining rock down here. Congratulations. Our interact is now actually working. Test it too. I'm going to run it again and I'm going to try to click somewhere else and just make sure that it's not actually printing the rock. Let's actually code mining the rock now. We need a pickaxe in order to do that. Let's go into itemtypes.py. We're going to add an axe and a pickaxe as different items that you can do. We'll do chopping down trees later. Take a look at this. These are called KW args. They have a key of some sort, which is chop power, and then they have a value. In this case, it's like 10. And you can add as many of these as you want. We're going to do the same thing, mine power and 10, and the key can be whatever you want. This is actually one of the benefits of using Python is you can just do this. Like you can just pass key value arguments like this. Jump into your inventory class, and we're going to add KW args here with 2 asterisks. This will capture all of those different, like this guy right here and this guy right here. And honestly, now you can add as many different kinds of stats to items that you want. Go into inventory.py, and we're going to add a dictionary called self.stats. We're going to create a new dictionary, And then we're going to loop through each one of the KW args, and we'll set the stat as that key. That way you can look up the chopping power, for example, if that item has chopping power or mining power or whatever. Is actually I think really cool because you can add any different kinds of stats to your items or game. Go ahead and go into inventory, and we're going to add a method here. Take a look at this for a second. I've coded a method called getBest. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to get the best item and its power from this list. So what we'll do is we'll loop through each one of the slots, and if, for example, there's something there, if the type is not none, like if it's not an empty inventory slot, there's actually an item there, and if that item has that stat that you're looking for. So you can just do get best and then pass in chopping power or get best magic or whatever stat that you want. And what it'll do is it'll find that stat, and then it's going to set, it's going to get the power and convert it to an integer. And we'll say, okay, is that power the best one? But the reason why this is important is because you might have like multiple different axes in your inventory or something. Now, some games do like action bars, and that's a very popular way of doing it, where like you can choose which axe that you're using or whatever. But I think that this is a little bit slightly easier for the player. And we can kind of talk about maybe if we do like equipment, we can talk about a different way. But anyway, if we find the best one, we're going to come in here, we're going to set the best power to P, the one we found, and then we're going to set the best item to s.type. And then at the end, we're going to return best. It's possible that you might not find anything in there that has what you're looking for. Like maybe you're finding magic and the player has a completely empty inventory, or they just don't have a magical item. So what it will return in that case is 0, and it will return item none. This is going to be and take a look, it's returning this variable best, which is actually a whole dictionary, right? And in this way, you can return multiple things from a function or method if you want. Jump back into usable.py. Go ahead and delete this print statement here. We're going to look up the player, and we're going to basically get the player class and also the player's inventory. Remember that the player's inventory is sort of like a global thing. That way we can kind of move to different areas and not delete the inventory. So we're going to get the inventory from here. And then we're going to call this getBest method. And we just say mine power, like look for this stat and get me the best one. Again, possible that the player may not be holding anything that can actually mine rocks or something. And this would return 0 and nothing. So first, we're going to check and see if the player can even mine at all by checking the power and see whether it's less than or equal to 0. Less than or equal to is like, if you do the less than, it's a good way of kind of just bulletproof checking to make sure that it's good. And then we're going to code a show message function here in a second on the player. Next, this is why the distance becomes so important, is because we can check if the player is close enough. If the distance is from the player to the tree is less than 60, for example, or whatever you want to put here, then we're actually going to perform the mining aspect. We're going to do player.showMessage, which I'll show you here in a second. And then we'll come in here and we'll remove the entity from the game. So we'll delete that rock. Otherwise, we're going to call player show message. If the player is not close enough, we're going to say, I need to get closer. A lot of the things that you interact with will probably use the distance of some sort. And this is why it's so useful to pass it. So we can just calculate the distance for everything that we interact with. And there's probably going to be some kind of calculation with the distance. Let's code this show message function that I was talking about. Let's go into player.py. Up at the top, there will be one global for the message time, which is how long the message is going to be shown for. Next, we're going to actually change the area label here on line 22 for me. Instead of self.area label, we're going to say message label. And then this is what we're going to use for the message. Let's come in here and we'll do the same thing over here for message label. What you can do is you can do Control F to find things, or Command F on Mac, and you can type in area label to see if there's any other ones. For me, there was only 2. And at the very end, we're going to basically show a message. We're going to call our function show message I keep talking about, which we're going to code in a second. And we're going to say entering area name. So when you enter a certain area, it'll show it for like 3 seconds or something. The show message function is actually pretty straightforward. All we do is we call set text on that message label, that text box up at the top left. And then we do a message countdown, and we're going to set it for the time in seconds times 60. The frame rate of the game we've set to 60, or we'll sort of assume that it's 60. This is not exactly perfect. If it's running slow on somebody's computer, it's not going to be exactly 3 seconds. It might be a little bit longer. But for now, this is good enough. It doesn't have to be super concise and accurate for just showing the message. Find your update function, and we're going to go and we're going to add the following code. So we're going to check if the message countdown is less than 0. Or I'm sorry, if it's greater than 0, and then we're going to just, subtract 1 from it. And then if we actually hit 0, we're going to clear the message text. Let's now come in here and we'll test it. Go to main.py and we'll run it. And if we take a look up at the top, it says entering forest, and this should actually disappear. Yep, cool. Pick up some diamonds from the last video. Let's click on the rock, and it'll actually say you need a pickaxe to mine this rock, and this should go away here in a second. Yep, perfect. So we've coded the, basically now it's checking to see if we need a pickaxe. So let's actually add a pickaxe to this world. If you come over to content and then to maps, go into forest.map. At the very top, so remember that these are any of our entities here. So what we'll do is we'll just add another 2 entities here. The 7 is the item, and then these are the types here, the 1 and the 2. 1 is the axe. This correlates with, if we go into source and we go to data and we go to item types, this right here is 0, and then 1, and then 2. I think actually we will probably do a level editor at some point so that this will be a little bit easier. But if we jump back into forest.map, these right here will add 2, an axe and a pickaxe on the floor. We'll go to main.py and we'll run this. And I actually think that the axe is there, but I think it's under a diamond from our last video. So I'll go ahead and stop this. Let's go to forest map, and let's get rid of some of these diamonds here. So anything with the zeros right here, like if you see the zeros there, we can get rid of any of those. Just be careful. Just make sure that they start with 7 and then they have the zeros. I'm not going to get rid of all of them. I'm going to get rid of maybe a couple of them, and we'll go from there. Yeah, so we'll leave 1 diamond on the floor at a different position. Yeah, we'll go from there. Let's come into main.py and we'll run it. And yeah, now we have the diamond on the floor and we have an axe. So we'll come in and we'll pick up an axe. And it still says you need a pickaxe to mine this rock. Let's go ahead and we'll pick up the pickaxe and we'll click it. I need to get closer. So now it knows that there's a pickaxe. Let's now mine it. And there we go. And now the rock is gone. So that was a lot of work. And you probably see how there's all the different parts that we had to kind of do, right? The inventory and the showing the message and, the interact function and stuff. But made it this far, really good job. Let's now go ahead and we'll make the trees interactable as well so that we can chop them down. In the usable.py file, let's go to the very bottom and we'll add a new class called Choppable, something that can be chopped down, right? We're going to take in an image of something that can be chopped down. This will actually be slightly different. So when we chop a tree, it'll actually leave a tree stump of some sort. We're also going to determine whether it's chopped down with a Boolean here, is chopped equals false. The logic will actually be quite similar. We're going to start by getting our player and also getting the inventory as well. Next, we're going to check and see if the tree, for example, has already been chopped down. And if it has, we're just going to show the message, hey, the tree's already chopped down, and then we can just return from here. We can stop and not run anything else. Otherwise, similar to the mining one, we're going to get the best, the best item based on the chop power that it has. And then we're going to check and see if the player can actually chop something down here. So we're going to check if the power is less than or equal to 0. If that's the case, we're going to say you need an axe to chop down this tree, and we're just going to return. We're going to stop from here. Otherwise, we're going to check if we're within range. So if we're within 60, and we're going to say, display a message. We're going to add a set image function to this, and I'll show you that here in a second. We're going to set the is chopped down to true. If we're not close enough to the tree, then we're going to say I need to get closer. And that's actually it for the logic for this, so super good on that. Let's go into sprite.py. Let's extend our sprite class to be able to change the image that it has by adding a set image method. It's basically going to copy the same code that we did in init, where all we're doing is just setting the image based on whether it's loaded or not. This will allow us to actually change the image of something later, and this applies to any sprite. So let's now go into data and objects.py. Go up to the top and we'll bring in the choppable class. Then we'll go ahead and find our tree sprite and our factory, and we'll say choppable. And then it takes in an object name, which is going to be like pine tree. And then the chopped image is going to be, if you take a look at your images, it's tree stump.png. So we'll say tree stump.png. So if we chop the tree, and by the way, you can come in here and you can actually neaten it a little bit by doing the following. So if the tree is chopped down, it's just going to change the image to a tree stump instead of like a full tree. Let's now go ahead and run this. Go up to the run button and we'll go from there. Inside of here, so let's try to chop down the tree. It says you need an axe to chop this tree. So let's go ahead and pick up the axe, pick up the tree. Click it, I need to get closer, and we'll click it. And there we go. We have now successfully chopped down a tree. Now, there's one more thing that we can do, and you might notice that just clicking, like nothing really happens. I think what we'll do is we'll add like a effect class that will show our actual tool. Effects are similar to particles in that you want to be able to display a lot of them really quickly. Because of that, I think that effects won't be entities. I think they'll be kind of light objects that can be sort of easily maintained by the effect, file. So let's actually add this to core. Go into core and we'll say new file and we'll say effect.py. We're going to need the camera, and we're also going to keep a track of all of the effects that are currently in the game. Start off by going and coding a effect class. It's going to take in the position of where the effect is. It's also going to take in how fast the effect is moving, X and Y. It will take in a life, which is how many frames that it can last for, and it will also take in an image. This image is assumed to already be loaded. This way it doesn't actually have to look up something or whatever, because you probably want to be able to spawn a lot of these effects. So a lot of this stuff is going to be preloaded. We're going to also add this object to the effects here as well. Effects are going to have a draw function, and we're also going to do the logic of everything inside the draw function. So what we're going to do is every single frame, it's going to go down in life, and then it's going to move wherever it needs to. And if the life has run out, it's going to remove itself from the effects, and it's just going to be deleted. And then last thing is we're actually going to draw our effect, go into engine.py, and we're going to add another one here that we're going to draw. So find where you've got all your draw code. Actually, let's add it after the drawables. So after the drawables and before the UI drawables, we're going to draw all of the effects, and we'll draw it basically over the things that are in the world, but not over the UI. With this being said, go back into your usable.py file, find the mineable one. If we have some kind of item, right after it, we're going to spawn an effect of some sort. So what's going to happen is the location is going to be the player's position, which in this case is other, right? The tree is what's being interacted with, and the other object is the player. So we're getting the player's X and Y. We're going to make the axe go slightly down. It's not going to be like an amazing effect or anything, but it will, it'll give some kind of animation. Maybe later we can make it better. It's going to last for 10 frames, which is a split second. 60 frames is 1 second, roughly. And then we're also going to get the icon of the image that's already loaded. So we're just going to get whatever best item that we found for mining dot icon. And that's actually and then we can just spawn that effect and go from there. Again, this is already preloaded, so we don't actually have to load it or anything. Go ahead and go down to the choppable one, and we're going to do the same thing here. Go ahead here, and we're going to add it right here as well. So right after we've determined that this code right here makes sure that there is actually an item that we can use to chop down stuff. So right after that, we're going to spawn it. We're going to do the effect regardless of if the player is close enough or not, right? If the player is too far away from the tree, they're going to try to chop it, but they're just going to be like chopping air. Like it's going to say, I need to get closer to do that. One more thing, go into engine.py, scroll down to the way bottom, and we're going to clear those effects. So yeah, we'll come in here and we'll clear all of the effects out. This is actually less important because the effects will eventually just run out anyway. But you don't want the effects of like the previous area or something like that to still be displaying to the screen. Okay, let's go ahead and test it. Go ahead and in main.py, we'll go ahead and hit the run button. Okay, we'll try to click the tree. You need an axe to chop the tree. Let's go ahead and pick up the axe. Okay. So you see that the axe actually shows up. Again, it looks kind of strange, but we do actually have an axe on the player. And you could actually position this axe differently if you want. Like you could move it around or whatever. Let's go ahead and try the rock here. We'll just make sure, yep, and the pickaxe shows up for the rock as well. Congratulations. Thank you so much for sticking with me as far as this. Basically, now we have the ability to interact with stuff in our game, chop down trees and mine stuff or whatever. And this actually makes a lot of our code easier for if we want to add like NPCs to our game and communicate with them, or if we want to add combat or whatever. Now, a lot of the interaction code is actually done, and checking the distance between enemies and stuff. It'll make our code for combat and stuff just a lot easier. Thank you so much for watching these videos. If you have any input or feedback, I'd be, please leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.